Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to try and unlock a mystery, and it's all hidden inside a single centuries-old image. So what if I told you that one image could explain the hidden rules of our entire world? Sounds pretty wild, right? Well, back in 1744, the Italian philosopher Giambattista Vico created this frontispiece for his book, The New Science. And for him, this wasn't just some pretty picture. No, he believed it held the key to his entire life's work. I mean, at first glance, it just looks like a puzzle, right? A bit chaotic. But Vico was convinced this was way more than art. He saw it as a map of the human mind itself. So to really get what he was on about, we've got to decode it, piece by piece. The idea was that this one image could give you a complete vision of his whole philosophy before you even read a single page. Pretty ambitious. All right, let's dive in.
Okay. So first things first, to even begin to understand this puzzle, we have to get a feel for the world Vico was living in. See, he wasn't just writing in a vacuum. He was pushing back, and hard, against a massive intellectual trend. You could almost say it was a battle for the very soul of knowledge. So on one side, you had the heavy hitters of the day, like René Descartes. This was the era of Cartesian rationalism. The dominant idea was that truth, real truth, is found through pure, cold, hard reason. Logic, scientific certainty, all that stuff. But Vico, he came along with this radical challenge. He looked at all that and basically said, hold on a second, you guys are ignoring what it means to be human. For him, truth wasn't just in the lab or in equations. It was also found in myth, in poetry, in history, in all the messy, imaginative, human stuff.
And this is where he proposed his new science. Now, he wasn't talking about a new science of physics or biology. He was talking about a science of culture itself. And this quote from the scholar Michel Mooney really nails it. For Vico, poetry isn't just pretty words. It's effective language. It's the wisdom that establishes humanity. In other words, he believed poetry is what literally builds society from the ground up. This is the core idea right here. Our world is built on stories. Okay, so with that big idea in our heads, that culture is built on stories, not just logic. Let's go back to that wild image. Let's really break it down and see how Vico used it as a visual map for his revolutionary ideas. So the whole thing is basically a story in three parts. You got the divine ray, the woman on the globe, and the poet. Vico saw this as the journey of the human mind, how we get raised, as he put it, from earth to heaven. Or to put it another way, it's the story of how we go from a sort of primitive state to a civilized one.
It all starts with this ray of divine light. Step 1. This represents providence, or a kind of divine plan. But notice what it hits first. It's not a king, it's not a soldier, it's not even a scientist. No, it shines directly on this figure, representing metaphysics.
And that brings us to step 2, this winged woman on the globe. This is metaphysics. Now that sounds like a complicated word, but for Vico, it really just meant thinking about the big picture, the nature of reality itself. And look, she's standing on a globe, which is the world of nature, and she's holding it up, keeping it from falling into darkness and barbarism. So she's this absolutely crucial link between some higher purpose and the physical world we live in.
But here's the kicker. This is step 3, and it's where Vico's idea gets really radical for his time. She doesn't keep that divine light for herself, and she doesn't pass it on to a philosopher king or a scientist. Instead, she reflects it onto the poet, Homer, who stands for all poetic wisdom and culture. And it's the poet who then lights up all the signs of human civilization you see at his feet. The law, the tools, everything that builds a society. The message is clear. Knowledge is filtered through poetry to create the world.
So this is the whole point, right? Civilization doesn't start with a mathematical formula. It starts with a story. It begins with what Vico called imaginative universals. These are the big, poetic characters. Think of Hercules, or Jove, or Thor. These foundational myths that you find in pretty much every culture. And for Vico, these were not just bedtime stories for kids. No way. They were the actual foundational building blocks that societies used to invent law, language, and religion. And that leads us to maybe one of Vico's most radical ideas of all. And it's all about what law and society are actually made of. And I bet it's not what you think. I mean, think about it. What is law?
Is it just a bunch of rules in a dusty old book? Vico and thinkers he inspired, like Peter Goodrich, would give you a hard no. They say law is a performance. It's theater. As Goodrich puts it, the social presence of law depended upon the theater of the court. The robes, the gavels, the rituals, that's where the power comes from. It's a whole production.
And all these performances, we're talking everything from a judge's wig to the singing of a national anthem, there's a term for this: nomograms. It sounds a little academic, but the idea is actually super simple. Nomos means law, so these are all the different ways the law gets written into a culture. It's not just in legal texts. It's in songs, ceremonies, rituals, even architecture. It's all the stuff that, gets under your skin and shapes how you behave without you even thinking about it.
This is the essence of what he called law as humanities. Vico believed that for a society to be healthy, its laws have to be connected to its humanities, its poetry, its history, its rhetoric. And he had a chilling warning for what happens when we lose that connection. He called it the barbarism of reflection. This is when a society starts to value only cold, scientific reason and efficiency. He said this is a new kind of barbarism, one that rots civilization from the inside out, when the stories that hold us all together just weaken and fall apart.
Okay, so this might all sound like a really interesting but, old philosophical idea from the 1700s. But what if I told you that a modern artist created a perfect 21st century version of Vico's emblem, maybe without even knowing it?
Well, let's talk about the contemporary artist Hiroshi Sugimoto. I want to show you his photo series, Theaters. He says he had this idea to photograph these images that seemed animated by life, to block them again. And the result, he says, was a white screen shining in the darkness. Let's see what he means. So, Sugimoto's method is just stunningly simple, but brilliant. He goes into one of these gorgeous old movie palaces, sets up his camera, and just leaves the shutter open for the entire movie, a whole 2-hour film. That's something like 172,800 individual frames, all condensed, all layered onto a single photograph. And what do you get? What's the result? You get an empty theater. And where the movie should be, there's just this screen glowing with a pure, brilliant white light. It's the sum of every single image that played across it, all the motion, all the story, all the color. It all collapses into this one single static moment of pure light. And this is where it all connects. Think about it. Vico's frontispiece from 1744 and Sugimoto's photos from our time, they're both doing the same thing. They're both what you might call a theatra mundi, a world theater. In Vico's image, a divine light gets funneled through poetry to give meaning to human culture. In Sugimoto's, the light of an entire film, an entire story, is condensed onto the screen. And what does it reveal? The theater's architecture, the very container of all possible stories. Both images are telling us that our sense of reality is an aesthetic construction. It's a stage, built from the light of the stories we tell. So, what are your emblems? Why should you care about any of this? I mean, it's a cool idea, but what's the takeaway? Well, the thing is, Vico's ideas have never been more relevant than they are right now in our world that is just saturated with images.
Let's track this idea through time. In the 18th century, Vico argues that societies are built on myth and imagination. Fast forward to the 20th century, and scholars start reviving his work, realizing he basically predicted the iconic turn, this huge shift towards the importance of images. And now, today, we are swimming in nomograms. Think about it. The rituals of social media, the stories told in advertising, the way news is presented, these are the systems that shape our behavior. Vico saw it centuries ago. We're governed by symbols, not just by logic.
And this really brings it home. That quote from Michael Mooney again, myths are instances of self-expression in terms of which a people now know who it is. These emblems we've been talking about, whether it's an ancient god or a modern brand logo, they're not just pictures. They are literally the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. So the real point is to start seeing them, to recognize the invisible emblems and hidden symbols that shape your world. What are the theaters that you walk through every single day without even realizing it? I'll leave you with that question. What are the myths and images that are secretly,
quietly governing your own understanding of reality.